morning, everybody. So today, Dr. Ronnie Woods and I will be talking to you guys about an important piece of the Agentic AI puzzle, and that is how to build context-powered enterprise AI agents with large action models. We've heard from the prior panel the anticipation of the enterprise value that Agentic AI is supposed to deliver much beyond what we have seen RPA deliver so far. So in the next 30 minutes, what we will be doing is tackling the natural follow-up question, which is how do we ensure enterprise deployment readiness, and how do we ensure value realization from day one? The answer lies in operational context and first-party enterprise data. So we'll talk about a little bit of where that context is coming from, and what does that mean for your own agentic automation roadmap. But first, let's start with some introductions. My name is Xuan. I am a Global Vice President here at Skan AI. I've been working in the automation industry for the better part of the last decade. I've had the privilege of working with many automation leaders, automation practitioners, and an array of automation solutions in our tech ecosystem. So it's truly a privilege to be standing here today in front of you guys. I've been attending IA Week for many years now. But it's even a greater privilege to be standing on stage with my co-presenter, Dr. Ronnie Woods. Dr. Ronnie, would you be kind enough to give the audience an introduction?
Rodney Woods, I'm former VP and Chief Clinical Engineer for Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee. How many from healthcare? I didn't get a chance to see. All right, super. We're agreed at that. Background, of course, electrical engineering, so thanks for the kudos for double E's, and started in manufacturing and landed in healthcare by accident. I was supposed to be there for 1 year, it ended up being 21 years moving through the organization. So just had a great ride, understanding what healthcare is all about, becoming as an electrical engineer who is black and white to understand what gray actually looks like when you're dealing with people and processes and technology. So glad to be here.
So much, Dr. Ronnie. All right, so as I alluded to in the intro, we're going to be talking about the enterprise opportunity in the age of Agentic AI, how it has evolved from the prior eras of automation, what is the biggest missing link right now in our Agentic AI playbook, and how do we bridge that gap with process understanding and large action models. All right, so I think everybody, no matter who you are or what you do, no one has been able to miss the rise of Agentic AI, right? It is being touted as this golden age of productivity, automation, and digitization, where these foundational models are becoming very much embedded in our personal lives, in our professional lives, and it's supposed to drive this future utopia where humans can just simply get rid of all of the tedious and mundane tasks because technology will take care of that. And we will be, only working in creative and strategic work, and potentially even spending time outside of work a little bit more, right? But I think despite the exponential evolution of AI that we see in daily news, I have yet to encounter a single enterprise organization that has put Agentic AI in production at scale. I'm seeing a lot of very expensive experiments, POCs, pilots, very simplistic task agents like a meeting booker or email organizer. And so when it comes to this, living in this quote unquote golden age of AI, sometimes it's kind of clear that right now that goal might be simply stuck behind the walls of the OpenAIs and the NVIDIAs of the world, right? So let's take a step back and let's take a quick look at the prior eras of automation technology and how it evolved to where we are today with agentic automation. So without going all the way back to the basic script automation tools that we used to rely on back in the late 90s, early 2000s, around 2010, we've seen that BPM tools and desktop process automation tools were the main productivity drivers for organizations. And then with the advent of RPA around 2015, we've seen a clear injection of value when organizations were able to cut down significantly in processing times of very mundane and repetitive tasks. But those tasks, as the name refers, is very simplistic, discrete, driven by a very deterministic execution followed by a step-by-step script, right? So a few years later, we saw the RPA bots became a little bit smarter. We started infusing them with AI-powered technologies such as conversational AI, intelligent document processing, process and task mining, and so on. But we also saw that the rise of hyperautomation trends in intelligent automation really encouraged a lot of enterprises to automate everything that can be automated. And that certainly created some value realization gaps for many organizations. So with the recent years, we saw the introduction of generative AI. And we've seen enterprises quickly turn around their attention to, well, how do we turn our programmatic automation robots into autonomous process agents to drive a much bigger competitive edge and productivity in our modern enterprise. And Dr. Rani, I wanted to ask you, as a technology leader in the healthcare space, how do you see agentic AI changing the operational outcomes in the payer side? And how soon do you think we're going to be able to operationalize that in production?
Yeah, so of course, being in healthcare, and one of the things you learn very quickly is that accuracy is not, optional. Coming as an engineer and everything else, and knowing the fact that things have to be very, very accurate. When you get around, you're dealing with people's lives. That's even more crucial. I'm not saying that when you're dealing with finance or some of those other things are not important, but when you're around nurses and doctors, and when you have to make decisions, and you don't have the opportunity to make and say, oops, I made a mistake, accuracy becomes very, very important. So a lot of the claims that are being processed or decisions that nurses and doctors are making, when you're bringing in these AI tools, they are a little more hesitant about adopting those things because of their background in schooling and everything else. So there is a trust factor that you're having to build with them, giving them the understanding that these tools are not going to be just left on their own making decisions, and you're dealing with human people's lives. So in the healthcare sector, and whenever I'm talking to people about bringing in Gen AI and everything else, it's very easy to bring into a customer service and everything else, but when you're having to make claims decisions around people's lives, we look at that in a very pod aspect of how can I test things first on low-level things that are not as impactful. So we are looking at between 12 to 18 months before you start seeing scale happens. I mean, every day you're seeing people saying, well, I'm doing Agentic in this space. You're seeing pharma, you're seeing some of the others are actually pushing back because of the danger of a mistake happening along those lines. So it is happening in the clinical and the healthcare space, but at a slower clip because you're dealing with the lives of people.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rani. So, taking the context from the prior slide, let's take a deeper look at the different type of automation or agentic agents that exist in our current ecosystem. Let's start with the task agents, right? These are the agents that are quite simplistic. They're taking discrete tasks, automating individual tasks, and they're better known as today's personal productivity co-pilots for most people. And then we've seen the rise of the service agents that are kind of becoming popular because they're able to reason, they're able to execute actions, they're able to produce content, and they're able to drive very personalized customer interactions, for example. However, the main limitation that we see in the service agents is the fact that they can mainly do the automation within the platform. They have the context of working with that specific platform engine. So what happens when it comes to end-to-end cross-platform processes in the enterprise, right? So that's where we see the rise of process agents. This is the end-to-end process agents that can operate without any sort of human intervention. And this is really the holy grail of the productivity transformer for the enterprise. So, Dr. Rani, I'm sure you have worked with some task agents and service agents in your career. What are some of the key gaps that you have seen when it comes to end-to-end process automation and execution?
Sure. So we put in, chatbots, all the RPA tools, but when you talk to someone, either in customer service or even a clinician who's taking in, the one thing that always happens after you listen to all the elevator music that have been waiting for a long time is context switching. They have one question and then all of a sudden they change and say, well, why I have you? Let me ask this question or that question. So all of a sudden the person who's been trained in a particular field of customer service or even the clinicians are now having to move from one system to the next, these legacy systems and trying to get these answers. And all of a sudden you don't have a real clear one-person view of that person's healthcare journey. And so one of the challenges that, that we're seeing and trying to address is how do you bring that information almost in near real time? And I guess if you ever called in to your healthcare provider or planner, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You're asking a question and let me put you on hold or let me transfer you. It's not that they don't want to do it, it's because they're inundated with such historical data, but also real-time information that they're trying to get to give you the best answer possible to address your needs. So that's one of the things that we're seeing that's being addressed from a healthcare perspective.
True. So let's take a look under the hood of this type of AI agents and what type of AI models will be powering them, right? I think most of you guys are very familiar with what LLMs are. They are trained on a corpus of publicly available data. They have deep horizontal knowledge. They're able to reason, they're able to execute tasks, but what they do not have is the actual operational context of your own enterprise and your operational landscape, right? So this is where we have the process agents now need very much of a multi-dimensional model, right? A model that enables them to embed business outcomes, to embed context or act with context-driven reasoning and be able to continuously improve themselves. So this type of process agents are capable of navigating your unique operational landscape with clear understanding of the nuances that you have in your organization. For example, if you're processing a claim in the property and casualty department versus that of the life and disability department, it's a very different process, right? If you are processing a claim in South Dakota, the regulations there might very much differ from the ones in Tennessee. So this type of nuances and context of your process variations is something that LLMs will simply not be able to learn and be able to operate under that context. So building what we call the large action models, which will be the models, the multidimensional models that will enable these process agents, is really using the direct modeling of human actions, right? What your human workers are doing by interacting with digital interfaces and doing a continuous observation of the work that they're doing by generating that end-to-end telemetry of your operational landscape. And so this way, they are able to be cognizant of all of your domain-specific operations, the context, your process variants, your exceptions, and permutations of those processes. So large action models are really kind of the door openers to goal-oriented, autonomous, and contextual process automation, building smart agents at scale in your enterprise that are ready to drive domain-specific processes with all of the different variants that you will typically encounter. And so I think crossing the chasm is really what will differentiate today's automation leaders from tomorrow's. Because instead of thinking about static process maps or PDDs or RPA scripts, we probably have to start thinking about how do I generate a living digital twin of my operations that I can then feed into this large action models in a continuous basis, right? So the simplest way that I can put this is generate data equals generic performance. Frontier foundational models do not have the context of how your organization operates, right? So if I put this in the context of an analogy for self-driving cars, Rodney, I don't know if you've ever driven in a Waymo or in a Tesla's full self-driving mode, but the first time I rode in one of those, it was a frightening but a very fascinating experience. Seeing that there was no human in control of the wheels, there was no human in control of the pedals, but I was feeling reassured that, well, this Waymo will get me safely to my destination because of all of the information that it has captured, the real-time GPS, the clear understanding of the local routes, and the fastest and most efficient way to get me to my destination. But what if somebody told you before you got onto that Waymo, by the way, this Waymo in particular was trained on the combination of the world's largest city routes. It has a very clear general sense of traffic rules and best practices for driving, but it might not have, the data of how your local neighborhood's routes or your local traffic rules work. But they say it should be able to navigate you to your final destination in your local neighborhood because of all of this general knowledge that has been trained on the world's largest cities. Would you feel safe riding in one of those Waymos or Teslas, Dr. Ronnie?
Unless I was drunk and I need to get home, I don't know about that. But no. Absolutely not.
Exactly. So if we would not put driverless cars on the road without all of these conditions, right? Why we would do that with enterprise AI agents? So, what if AI agents could actually get trained in your organization's unique first-party operational data and not having to rely on generic assumptions? What if they could figure out exactly how to navigate exceptions and edge cases without needing additional human input, right? And what if they could learn from the nuances and the best practices of your top performance and then be able to replicate and even multiply the capacity of their outcomes, right? And lastly, what if actually they can operate with built-in governance with security guardrails, audit trails, value measurements, and be able to actually link their outputs to their business outcomes? I think that will probably eliminate a lot of the last mile challenges that we're seeing in the agentic implementation journey today. So I want to kind of put this in the context of automation leaders today. I think many of you guys are in the position of designing the blueprint for the future of the AI factory. You're assembling the building blocks in terms of AI, in terms of data, in terms of automation. You are trying to find AI-ready data to start, planting the seeds for your AI factory. And I think many of you will resonate, who are leaders of the automation COEs, that the value really starts to emerge once you start to trust and know what your automations are doing in production, and whether those executions are aligned to your business goals, right? And I think it's a sheer understanding from many conversations that I have had in the past year with automation and business leaders that while AI is the brain and automation is the muscle, data is the lifeblood of your agentic AI journey. And there's a clear emphasis on the quality and the breadth of that data, right? We've heard the terms, we don't want garbage in, and we don't want garbage out. We want that data to actually reflect what your business is doing and be able to actually deploy autonomous, goal-driven, and process-aware intelligent agents at scale in your organization. So how do we begin to develop this agentic blueprint? I think I've heard many experts say that, well, enterprises have been collecting decades of domain-specific operational data in regards to big data. And as long as that data is accessible, you should be able to just insert that into your LLMs and have your agents replicate what your human operator would do. What they're not saying is the fact that that data that they're referring to is likely structured data, is even lost from your systems of records, right? So what happens with the trivial knowledge that sits in the heads of your employees? The years of experience and the intuition that they have developed in navigating a process in the most efficient way with the best compliance and maximizing business outcomes, right? So when it comes to that tacit knowledge, it's almost impossible for us to capture explicitly in any sort of documentation, in any sort of traditional databases or data lakes, or even synthetic data and knowledge graphs that we've been hearing about. So truly, the only way for us to capture that contextual operational knowledge is to then the direct observation of human actions and their interactions with their digital workstations. So Skan AI's process intelligence technology is the first AI-powered solution that really allows you to capture the 360-degree view of your operational black box. And it creates that living digital twin of your processes by using non-intrusive and continuous observation of your human operators at work and creating that end-to-end work telemetry that can then be fed into your large action models. So, just to reiterate a little bit of that, the architecture of this process intelligence technology, right? For us, automation, reengineering, transformation should always be guided by the taxonomy of human actions and the analytics of their outcomes, right? So, if we want to enable data-driven decisions that are based in real time and continuous capturing of your telemetry of work, you gotta have that 360-degree view of your people, process, and technology in your organization. Right? To do that, we use non-intrusive sensors to observe your human-centric operations, and then we use AIs to stitch together that end-to-end observation and then reveal and translate your human operations black box into what we call the digital twin of operations. And that way we help model the actions and the patterns of successful execution paths so that the AI agents can reproduce that and exponentially multiply that capacity. Right? And this requires actually no integration in the back-end systems. It captures the 360-degree view of work from both system and your human actions. And with those insights, we will help enable the specific agentic automation that is based on the intelligence gathered from your own people process technology to truly drive transformation at scale. So, let's take a look at how with the large action models will actually get the work done, right? And we can think about this in comparison to perhaps a new claims analyst that you just hire. And so just how the claims analyst will receive a claim in their inbox and trigger the sequence of actions to complete and process that claim, the large action models would ingest the input signals from an API, a ticket, a prompt, or a user click, right? It would then reason over the context of this claim. You would read it, you would try to understand what is the task that I'm trying to accomplish, and then I'm gonna tap into the RAG, the retrieval augmented generation, right, to then find and recall the internal memory of prior transaction logs, of historical context that is based on the neurosymbolic AI data that we have. What is neurosymbolic AI? It is a visual representation of the step-by-step actions that is taken in any given process. So essentially, once that context is captured, they're able to anchor all of that context into your unique enterprise rules and not having to rely on any sort of generic training data, as the LLMs would do. And then it will create a sequence of actions based on the goal that is set, and then create a branch logic for any type of process variation or exception path that it might encounter, learning from that first-party telemetry context that it has. And so from there, it might also add the reinforcement learning from human feedback to add that continuous optimization, because it doesn't mean that we don't need humans in the loop anymore. We will always need them to continue to identify compliance patterns, optimization patterns, new exceptions that are emerging, and how do we resolve them, by continuously optimizing our models. At the end of the day, once this large action model is able to complete the sequence, it's going to report back the results of that process and then compare that to the goal that it was supposed to achieve. And then with that feedback, continue to optimize the future processes that it would execute. So the punchline is this, guys. You can't just use a public LLM and expect it to work or to replicate a seasonal worker in your organization, right? You need a large action model that is relying on high fidelity first-party operational data and the telemetry of your enterprise work in order to make decisions that can help emulate the expert reasoning of your employees and drive that autonomous, goal-driven execution across your enterprise. So I wanted to show you a quick demo of how we uncover all of this uncover the human operations black box, right? So we implement, as I mentioned, the sensors on the operators' desktops, and then we use the high value of the computational logic to then create millions of event streams that gets embedded into the business outcomes, and we then convert that into a digital process twin. So the demo that you're seeing is what we call a clickstream. This is coming from the observation directly of how humans are working on all types of interfaces, right? So this is completely agnostic. It can be a mainframe, it could be a cloud application, it could be a virtual desktop, it could be a homegrown application, right? And it could also be all sorts of data sources, it could be all sorts of interactions, but it's essentially converting that observation into a real-time data model and translating that direct observation of work to feed into the large action models. So I would like to put this in the context of a practical example, a claims adjuster use case. This is, by the way, one of the agents that we're building with one of our insurance clients. And I think one of the key things that I wanted to highlight here, and I'll show you a demo in the next slide, is the purpose of this type of agents is not just to take RPA to the next level, right? We are trying to build a new role automation that enables agents to execute the work that humans will cover end to end. And so we're looking at all of the ways from goals to outcomes and all of the interim steps in that stateful process management to enable Agentic to not only recognize those patterns, but also be able to reproduce these patterns, right? So let's take a look at an actual demo of that process that I showed you in the last slide. And I want to clarify, this is still in prototype and development mode, so it's not yet in general availability. So on the left side of the screen, I'll play this demo in a second, but on the left side of the screen, you'll be seeing how the agents is navigating the interface in the claims portal, in this case, GuideWire. On the right side of the screen, you'll see the backend model, the reasoning, and the backend chain of thoughts that is utilizing to then identify the next best action every single step of the process. And so it will also start, by the way, with the goal, right? What is the goal that I'm trying to achieve with this process? In this case, it could be maximizing customer satisfaction and minimizing processing time. And so when it's building that sequence of steps for that process, it's going to be trying to optimize parameters like turnaround time or profitability before it actually jumps into action. So what you're seeing right now is that agent is logging in, is trying to find the claim that it's going to be serving. And with that on-screen visibility, the backend model is then evaluating that the claim information, how does that claim information match against the objectives that is set, and then create that step-by-step next best action for each step of this sequence. And we'll see soon that the claim will all of a sudden run into an exception, right? And you will see on the screen on the right hand, well, the AI agent using the first-party telemetry is able to then resolve this exception without bringing any human into the loop, right? And once, as I mentioned, once the process is finished, it will then report back the results of this process and then compare that to how it did against the goal that it was stated and how do we continue to improve that based on the feedback of this process. And so what brings all of this together is really the power of the agentic operating model, right? In the near future, I can see enterprises being able to multiply the capacity of their human operators exponentially. So think about how one human agent now can be monitoring and managing the work of 10 or 50 AI agents simultaneously, and only needing to jump in when there's new exceptions that needs to be reviewed by the human, right? So this is really the transformational power that we should be aiming for when it comes to agentic automation in the enterprise. So Dr. Rani, I think I've mentioned a lot of the conceptual side of operationalizing agentic AI in the enterprise. I would love for you to share with the audience a little bit of, from your end user perspective, how have you leveraged process intelligence and digital twins to lay the ground for agentic automation?
Yeah, so one of the things, I guess all of us, if we are very truthful about ourselves, sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And going out and actually finding out what your process is the next step. I mean, I probably could have retired a long time ago to all the 3M sticky notes I could have put on a wall and mapping out processes only to find out that I really didn't understand that. So one of the things that we started doing within the operation was actually walk through these steps, going out and capture and analyze what's actually going on, in our overall process and things of that nature. And then, finding all those bottlenecks and all those inefficiencies and coming to terms, not, arguing in a room, but actually looking at the data and saying, okay, this is actually what's happening. How do we resolve that moving forward? And then the other aspect of, answering the question, I need more staff, but now we're able to see what's the actual capacity level, what's actually going on. Do we need to add more staff, or is this really a process improvement change that we need to address? And then also going back, implementing those things, but with a digital twin aspect and using Skan's technology, we're now able to see things in real time, not only what's going on from a process aspect, but also what's going on from a staffing aspect as well. So that sort of led us to how do we start creating our future workforce? And so we went through these processes. I won't read them all, you've already read through them, the digital twin, all the way to the agentic automation aspect of looking at what's going on. And then going through these overall process of seeing, what's actually happening holistically as we're moving into another, what's our future workforce looking like? Not eliminating teams, but actually how do we augment nursing staff, everyone else around that to be more effective in what's going on.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ronnie. So let's wrap it up. I see that my timer is ticking down. So 3 key takeaways that I want you guys to walk away with. Number 1, and this is the main focus of our presentation today, in order for you to bridge the chasm, you gotta start to figure out where are you going to be gathering the vast amount of training data that you need to feed your agentic models, right? Number 2, you need to shift your mindset. You can't stop, you can't keep thinking about agentic as RPA on steroids. We gotta think in a whole different level in regards to how do I change the organizational design that we have today to enable the future of AI-driven operations in my operational landscape. And number 3, and this is very important, although we didn't have too much time to talk about this, traceability and auditability. You want to have a very transparent view of all of the actions and the logic that your agents are doing in each step of the process, in order to give your business stakeholders, your risk management teams, a clear and transparent view of everything in the explainability of the actions that your agents are doing in production, so that this transparency will allow them to sign up on changes and maintain that continuous compliance as the models continue to evolve. Dr. Ronnie, I also would like to invite you if there's any additional thoughts that you want to share with the audience.
This process intelligence and governance, I think those would be the 2 things that you want to operate on. So just looking at those 2 things.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.